Mr. Dave LaRue. Dave, thank you very much for taking the time to do this for Gig Digest today. Also, thank you for accommodating our lackadaisical schedule. We were a bit late, so quite an honor for us to have you here.
Oh, well, with musicians, you know, lackadaisical schedules are hardly out of the ordinary.
Correct. You know, outside of the obvious Dixie Dregs, Steve Morse Group, G3, Vinnie Moore, Rod Morgenstein, you've worked with Outbound Road and Pat Travers, and just a world-class instructor. The things you've accomplished in the time that you've had to do it is just mind-boggling. I even watched some video the other day of you on television from a live performance on television in '93, and it was just amazing. It says, you know, you've done a lot, as I said. You know, you're working with R&D, with manufacturing. You're endorsed by some of the best people there is to have behind you. The industry supports are outstanding. You've got a book out. I'd like to know more. What's in the near future? What's Dave doing right now?
Well, one of the things I can talk about, you bring up the book that's out. I also did an instructional video for REH several years ago. I think now it's under Alfred Music. But I'm about to shoot a video series for a company called jamplay.com, which has many it's an online instructional site with guitar, and they're just now expanding the bass faculty. So I'm going to be going out there and shooting for 3 days to try to get 3 hours of usable content. So I got that hanging over my head. But it should be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to getting it out. It looks like a real good company. They gave me, you know, I asked them if I could have access to the site to see how everything looked and what the instructors are doing, and it's real high quality stuff, so I'm pleased to be involved with them. So that's coming up.
That's amazing. After all the success you had as a player and as busy as you are as a player, where do you find the time to do this?
To do the
instructions to teach here at Bass Central?
Well, when I'm off the road, my time is my own. I'm basically self-employed. I do a lot of session work. I have a band that I play with locally. But I've taught throughout my career, and it's something I really enjoy in several respects. I mean, I love trying to pass on some of the knowledge that I've gained from great instructors over the years to a new generation of players. And also, quite honestly, they keep me in touch with what's going on, because I still listen to stuff from way back when the stuff on my stereo is not what's on their stereo. So they kind of bring in things to me, and we work on that, and it gets me in touch with new music as well, and keeps me inspired. These guys, you know, some of my students are, I mean, they work hard, they play great, they come in, half the time it's like I'm saying to them, hey, show me that. What was that?
Yeah, well, that kind of leads me to the next one is, you know, what do you think of the current state of music? Let's say, I'm being very broad, but that being said, not a lot of people seems to be are taking the time to actually learn how to play an instrument.
No, you think?
That's upsetting. And
yeah, as much as I love Pro Tools, it's kind of the bane of, you know, learning how to play. One no longer needs to know how to play in order to create something resembling music on their computer. So it's a whole, you know, I'm going to date myself, but it's a whole different generation. When I grew up, we took pride in playing our instrument. That's what we wanted to do, and I always looked at the best players and wanted to do what those guys were doing. Now it's all about, like, how do I create some hit? How do I get noticed on the web? How do I do this? You know, whereas it was all about playing when I was growing up, and with my generation of players, it was always all about that.
So you think, in your opinion, vice versa is self-promotion via the social media, has it actually done more to hurt today's player, or has it actually helped in some respects?
It has. I mean, it has in some respects. I mean, it's something I'm still learning. Again, of course, always fighting the trends. But one thing good that has come out of all this social media is that we're no longer slaves to record companies. I mean, we used to have, you know, I mean, these contracts that were written back in the 1800s that essentially made us indentured servants to these guys. Now we don't need them anymore. We can get our music out there, and if we can create a niche for ourselves, we can actually make money playing music that we like, no matter how weird it is. And that's all I know is weird music. So for me, it's great. So in that respect, it's been a great thing. And it just gives so much more access to people listening to music and creating it. But on the other hand, the technology, as I stated earlier, has you know, some disadvantages too. From my perspective, again, you know, the artistry or the desire to create art seems to have gone by the wayside. The desire to do new things, and I don't call, you know, getting a new kick drum, electronic kick drum sound on your, you know, 4/4 groove. I don't consider that to be something new. I mean, that's the same old stuff that everybody's doing it, but to hear new music is what, you know, things that interest me that are different and creative than what has gone before. That's what I think a musician is supposed to do. Now, that's an antiquated notion, I know, but that's how I grew up. So that's what I strive to do, is do something different, something people haven't heard, and something that will pique your interest and tickle your ear a little bit. It's like, oh wow, that's not the same exact thing that I heard on the other station. I mean, there are so many singers now, I couldn't tell you who's who, and that there are some great ones too, and don't mistake me, I'm not saying they're all a talentless bunch of idiots, because there are some marvelous vocalists out there. But a lot, I mean, how many times can you listen to the auto-tuner? I mean, come on.
Exactly.
It's boring.
Well, that brings me to think about a store such as this, Bass Central, which specializes in the needs of bass players in Central Florida and elsewhere, online sales, which is a great thing. Once again, social media has really helped kick that up. But
yeah,
I also
for sure.
I also see that the fact that you in Bass Central specialize in high-end gear to get the proper tools or better tools into the hands of the player, and to prevent from falling off to the wayside, looking for that sampled sound, looking for that easy out.
Right.
How long have you been associated with Bass Central?
Well, pretty much since Beaver moved to this location. I mean, I've known Beaver for years, and we've worked together on various things, but I've been loosely associated with the store since he came here, you know, and I helped him do a few things here and there, and I mean, it's his baby, so my association is loose at best, but it's yeah, I'm proud to be associated with it though, because of exactly what you said. It's a high-end store that caters mostly to, I mean, most of the people in that market are kind of more advanced players, and they're looking to take the level of their instrument and their sound up a notch. And honestly too, with the competition in the retail industry these days, one must, again, like with social media, you got to carve out a niche for yourself. And we cater to those people that are looking for this specific thing. Now, we don't have every less expensive item. I don't want to start naming brand names. I almost slipped there. Get some people really angry. But yeah, anyway, you know, we don't carry all the stuff that's just going to bring in the 8-year-old kids starting off the street and stuff. We cater to a different level of player.
That's something I think that's long overdue in a lot of fields as far as retail goes. Your mom and pop stores have fallen to the wayside via online sales from different manufacturers, wholesale shippers. These people have actually stepped on the toes of all the small business people, like where I bought my first Fender. You know, these stores don't even exist anymore, and I don't know how they can continue unless they specialize.
On the other hand, some do, because they are able to create an online presence, and if they don't, they're idiots. I mean, it's just the way it is. Right. So they have to push that just as hard. But yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's really tough when you're battling to, you know, have a place alongside Sam Ash's and the Guitar Centers of the world. I mean, it's just tough to do that. That's the reality of it. It's like trying to set up a grocery store next to Walmart. I mean, you know, come on. It's just going to be difficult.
Well, the fact that you were, you know, a Berklee School of Music graduate, you've studied with so many masters, do you think it's really important that musicians do take that step, bass players specifically in your voice, take the step to become classically trained, classically aware of what they're going into? Or do you think that the few that filter through on their own abilities, it's good enough?
Well, first of all, I mean, Berklee was, at the time I was there, was more of a jazz school, although I did get some classical background, and to get my bachelor's degree I had to do, half of my recital had to be classical music. So I was up there with a bow, and he was like, whoa, boy, we shan't revisit that. But in answer to your question, everybody's different. Everybody's unique. Everybody has different learning styles. I know this firsthand from teaching for years and years and years. All of my students are slightly different than others. I mean, I have a formula that I think tends to work well for most, but there's always guys, and this is true throughout the years, I have to cater differently to certain people. Everybody has certain strengths and certain weaknesses. Some people have great ears, but they don't know the first thing about what they're doing. They know how to find their way around the neck, but if you put them in a situation where the producer says, okay, you know what, instead, let's take the bridge to B minor, let's put this kind of feel, I mean, they're lost. Right. You know, they have a hard, or they're not as quick at adjusting as someone who has some background in that. Now, other people like me, my strength is more like with mathematics. I mean, the theory thing opened it up to me. What I struggled with in my career was developing my ear and playing expressively. I had to learn to bring what's inside out. I knew all the stuff. I mean, I could take a test, but could I actually play something that was sincere and musical and emotional, which is, again, what we're trying to get to, or what I was, you know, my generation of people were trying to get to, yeah, as opposed to something carved out in order to climb up the charts. But, so that was my difficulty. So for me, now, and this isn't true across the board, but for me, Berklee was amazing, because I started late in high school, but I knew I wanted to play, and it enabled me to catch up to my peers who'd been playing since they were 8 years old or whatever in a short amount of time, because in that 4-year period, they crammed all this stuff down my throat. And of course, again, that academic thing sort of being my strength, I ate it up. I thrived in that environment. Now, learning how to play all that crap later was the tough part. But I got the information, and for some people, that's essential, you know. But again, everybody learns differently. People that are good with that need to work on their ear and do the other thing. People that play by ear, generally, and again, in our field to try to make a living, sometimes they need to learn to read or to play other styles in order to be able to do whatever you got to do. I mean, I stayed alive after college by playing every kind of gig you could imagine, you know. So and that was another good thing about Berklee too. I was exposed to a lot of different things. I learned how to play jazz and Latin tunes, so I could fill in sort of half-assed, but nonetheless I could fake a lot of styles, and that put bread on my table. I mean, I played weddings and did whatever I had to do and taught. And again, that's gone throughout my career. Fortunately, the wedding thing is gone by the by. we no longer need to do that.
Amen. Let me ask you, Dave, where were you born? Where are you from originally?
I was born in Flushing, Queens, in New York City. But when I was 3 years old, my family escaped from New York and moved to the suburbs of New Jersey. And that's really where I'm from. Although I've been in Florida now for 15 years, we still call Jersey home, right. Although that's fading away. Every time I go up there now, it's just insanity. And I don't know if it's because I'm getting more relaxed in Florida, or it's in fact getting more densely populated there. But I was just up mixing a record up in New York, and it's just insane. And the cost of living so high, yada yada. It's just no longer feels like home to me. But that's where I cut my teeth, and all my old friends are there, and some family and stuff. So I wanted to ask also, is being from there and living there to the length that you did, how much of an influence has that been musically on you, or what is your favorite genre or era of music that inspired you to stay true to what you consider your roots? Well, I mean, are you asking about being up there,
or just was the New Jersey Philly sound happening?
No, it wasn't so much that. What the difference I noticed, again, this could be a thing based on the era, but being up there were tons of great players. Even in my high school, there were these great guitar players, and I mean, I saw these guys, and of course I aspired to that. One of the reasons I went to Berklee is because there was a band that was two years ahead of me. They were seniors when I was a sophomore, and they were killing. And then the two best guys, who I really admired, went to Berklee. So I was like, well, what's that? What's up with that? So I had to find out about that. But there was just an enormous amount of great players and great teachers too. I mean, I owe a huge debt to a man named Mike Santiago, who's a great guitar player, great composer, who not only taught me bass, but I got to a certain point, he said, well, why don't you play in my band? So I started working with him professionally too, and he taught me a lot in that regard. And a great guitar player named Harry Leahy taught me a lot about improv and stuff, and I was blessed to have worked with those guys. So the Northeast, oh, and then after college too, there were so many great bands. I was after I got past the wedding stage, I was working 7 nights a week playing either in hard rock bands where we would cover. I worked with this great guitar player who could sing all the Zeppelin stuff really well, but we would also do Dregs and King Crimson. So of course we were always throwing in the weird stuff with that. And then I was playing in a great jazz Latin band from Philly. I had my own fusion band, which instrumental jazz rock kind of Holsworthy weirdness stuff. So I was doing all these different things, and there were all these great players and places to play, which is another thing. I mean, I actually got paid for most of those gigs, not all of them, but so that was a great working environment. And I was challenged. Great bass players were on the scene too, so I was constantly challenged and watching them and trying to, you know, take their gigs. work to the point where I could take their gig. And so yeah, it was a great environment to grow up in musically.
So all right, well then that kind of leads me to the next question. What is one of your favorite or your proudest achievements, a crowning musical achievement that you've had in your career?
I don't know.
Or is that yet to come?
Well, I think it's yet to come. A couple of things that I'm proud of. Well, I've been nominated for Grammys 3 times, so that's kind of nice. You know, more than one kind of gives you credibility.
Yeah.
Like one time, like, yeah, well, that's a fluke. Well, I got 3, so so that's I'm proud of that.
Should be.
And another thing that I did that was really cool was Deep Purple did a benefit at Royal Albert Hall for the, I believe it was for the music education system in Great Britain at that time. And I'm sure there were funding cuts or whatever, and they went in and raised money for music education. And they performed John Lord's Concerto for Rock Band and Orchestra or whatever, but that's only like 40 minutes long. So they had all the guys bring their own bands or have other people that, I mean, Ronnie James Dio was there. It was a lot of fun. But Steve brought us over, and we got to play a tune of his called Night Meets Life with the London Symphony. Oh yeah, the London Symphony was behind us. So that was pretty wild. And the coolest thing about that was my mother and father flew over.
Oh, man.
Sat in the box in Royal Albert Hall watching their little boy play with the London Symphony.
Brings a tear to my eye.
That was a pretty special moment.
That is hot. All right, well, then outside of that, what I'd like to know is, how do you think, or what would you like to see actually happen in the Central Florida music scene? What do you think it would be of benefit for that to grow back to some of its glory days, or grasp its niche and hold on to that without things falling apart the way they have in the last 10 years as far as venues and access?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one. And let me preface that by saying I'm not that involved in this scene because I actually live up in Ocala. So I come down, I migrate down to teach, and now I have my own trio here in town, which is good because that's getting me out and around town a little bit. And I'm meeting some other people who are playing. But what you're talking about is sort of true everywhere. The venues are closing up, there's less call for live music, and especially for sort of music that's on the edge. You know, there's still places that'll have cover bands come in and play, but less and less places for the stuff that I do to start out. So I don't know where those guys go now.
So what's in the future for you now? What is your next plans? We've got any tours planned, another recording? Or are you still working with Steve? Yeah, still working with Steve. Actually, we have a tour coming up starting in August. It's about 6 weeks long. We'll be opening for Joe Satriani's band, and that's all over the U.S. So that's the next thing with him as far as that's concerned. So we'll be doing a lot of dates this summer, and finally in the U.S. We did Europe twice last year and South America. It's like he really wants to play in the States, as do I. So I'm looking forward to that. Got a question about your Music Man. You've been instrumental in the R&D department with bongo basses, Music Man. Your electronics the sound is just incredible, very responsive, very full.
Yeah, I mean, I love working with Music Man. I was really gratified when Sterling asked me to be part of the team that developed the bongo. And they actually flew me out to the factory, I think 3 times. And it was a great experience because I worked with their main guitar designer. Just to tell the story of the bongo, the body came from designers at BMW, I believe. Sterling said, I don't want to make another P bass, I don't want to make another jazz bass, let's do something different. So he went to these guys and said, if you were to make a space age guitar, what would it look like? And this was the most conservative design they came up with. I saw they had a full-size sketch pad of the stuff these guys came up with. Some of it was pretty wacky. This is the most inside one. But having said that, so I went out really to work on the electronics and the pickups. He did ask me if I wanted a 24 fret neck, and I said, yes, I do. And so the first Music Man with 24 frets came out. But it was a great experience. We went in and we set up a couple different amplifiers, and one that I was particularly familiar with, an Ampeg rig. We had a Sterling bass, a Stingray bass, and then a mock-up of the bongo where we could take pickups in and out and preamps in and out, and we could sort of interchange modules, essentially. They had it set up like that. And we went through bunches of pickups, and we even put Sterling pickups in, and we listened to the stock stuff, and then I would play we had a jazz bass there. I mean, we were comparing everything. It was really good to have all those references and say, how do we make this better? What are we missing from this that we want here? Or this has that but doesn't have that, so how do we incorporate all that? So like I said, we went through tons of pickup combinations, windings, and then the fun part was we started to get into the EQ points and the Q slope of the EQ controls. And I got to stick my fingers into that quite a bit. And I'm pretty proud of it because I think these actually not only are effective, but make the bass sound better instead of just like being either the rumble control or the fret noise enhancer. So
yeah, there's a very natural, very human tone
I agree.
I look for in any guitar, and that's providing it.
I like that you can actually use the EQ and make the bass sound better.
A musical instrument, hey.
Yeah.
And those can be found right here, as a matter of fact,
They
at Bass
certainly
Central.
can.
That's awesome. Well, I'm not going to keep them much more than the fact that I really appreciate the time.
I've been talking a lot,
and I got some Tic
It's a
Tacs. If you don't mind, you can play us out a little bit. That'd be a sweet thing.
You had to say that, didn't you?
Of course, that's what we're here for. Dave LaRue, thank you so much for your time.